Picture this. It's a crisp dawn in ancient Judea. The summer harvest is wrapping up, and the sacred fall season is right on your doorstep. It's the first day of the 7th month, and it kicks off what is arguably the most spiritually dense, vital season in the ancient Israelite calendar. In this explainer, we're diving straight into a fascinating event known as the Feast of Trumpets, or Yom Teruah. We're going to unpack exactly what this day was, why it mattered so much, and how it literally served as an acoustic alarm clock for an entire nation. Let's get into it.
Right out of the gate, we hit a pretty massive paradox. A feast without food? Now, when you and I hear the word feast, we instantly think of a huge banquet, right? Overflowing tables, celebrating, eating until you literally can't eat anymore. But the Feast of Trumpets is entirely different. There's no command to build booths like you'd see during the Feast of Tabernacles. There's no central Passover meal to eat. And on the flip side, there's no strict mandate to fast like you'd find on the Day of Atonement. So we've got to ask, how on earth can an event with no central meal be called a feast?
Well, to answer that, we have to look at the original language. In the Hebrew scriptures, the word most commonly translated into English as feast is moed, or moedim if we're using the plural. And moed doesn't mean a banquet. It actually translates to an appointed time, an appointed meeting, a set season, or a sacred assembly. So the really crucial takeaway here is that in ancient Israel, a feast was simply a time that God specifically appointed to gather and meet with his people. It wasn't about the menu, it was about the meeting.
I love this because it perfectly highlights the huge disconnect between our modern expectations and ancient biblical reality. Think about it. A modern feast is all about consuming, eating, drinking, earthly celebration. But a biblical feast, that is a divinely appointed holy day. It's a national gathering focused entirely on worship, covenant, and sacrifice. The Feast of Trumpets was called a feast simply because it officially announced the opening of the great fall festival season. It was this highly anticipated, sacred observance that brought the whole nation together.
Let's look directly at where this all comes from. If we pull straight from Leviticus chapter 23, verses 23 through 25, the text says, "Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall ye have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets and holy convocation." That passage is the bedrock. It permanently established the first day of the Hebrew month of Tishri as a holy gathering. The people were literally commanded to stop their normal, everyday lives and remember their covenant with God, all of it marked by the piercing sound of trumpets filling the air.
So, what did this actually look like on the ground? There were 5 main activities that shaped the day: the blowing of trumpets, specifically the shofars, a strict holy Sabbath rest, special sacrifices, a deep period of self-examination, and finally, some massive kingship themes tying it all together. Let's break these down to really understand the profound nature of what was happening here.
We have to start with the absolute centerpiece of the day, blowing the shofars, or ram's horns. The Hebrew name for this feast is Yom Teruah, and Teruah literally translates to a loud blast, a shout, or an alarm sound. In ancient Israel, trumpet blasts were not just for making pretty music. They were highly functional. A sudden blast signaled a gathering, called sacred assemblies, warned everyone of approaching military danger, and called people to urgent repentance. It was a sound that absolutely demanded your immediate attention, no ignoring it.
On this specific feast day, those repeated echoing blasts of the shofar across the hills sent one very clear spiritual message: awake, prepare yourself before God. It was literally an acoustic alarm clock for the soul. In fact, this day was so impactful that later Jewish tradition began calling the period between the Feast of Trumpets and the upcoming Day of Atonement the Days of Awe. We're talking about an intensely focused 10-day season dedicated entirely to deep reflection and sincere repentance.
But here's the thing. You can't properly reflect if you're constantly distracted by your daily grind, right? So the second major component is a holy Sabbath rest. Leviticus strictly commanded the people to cease all ordinary servile labor. You leave the fields alone. You close up the workshops. Instead, families and communities gather together in courtyards to pray, hear the reading of the law, and recalibrate their moral compasses. It was a hard, intentional pause on life, allowing the mind and spirit to finally catch up.
Then there's the sensory element at the sanctuary. Numbers chapter 29, verses 1 through 6 outlines the special sacrifices for the day. It commands the people to offer a burnt offering for a sweet savor unto the Lord. The priests oversaw this incredibly elaborate series of burnt offerings, grain offerings, drink offerings, and sin offerings. For the Israelites standing there, watching that smoke rise from the altar was a powerful, visceral symbol of their consecration, their thanksgiving, and a desperate plea for inward cleansing.
Which naturally pushes us right into the fourth activity, self-examination. Just imagine standing on a high ridge, looking out over a vast valley in total quiet reflection. That captures the exact mood of the day. While Moses' law didn't explicitly call trumpets a fast day, it instantly became spiritually bound to repentance. Why? Because the clock was ticking. Exactly 10 days later was Yom Kippur, the solemn day of atonement. So the Feast of Trumpets was the starting gun. It woke up the conscience so people could examine their sins and mend broken relationships before the ultimate day of judgment actually arrived.
And finally, wrapping all of this together are the kingship themes. Over time, Jewish understanding deeply connected the sounding of those trumpets with God's absolute sovereignty over creation. Think about it. When a human king ascended a throne or entered a city, what happened? Trumpets were blown. So on the Feast of Trumpets, that massive chorus of shofars served as a royal proclamation declaring, "The Lord reigns." It infused the whole day with this incredible sense of awe, brilliantly linking personal repentance with the ultimate reality of divine judgment.
Okay, let's zoom out for a second to see how the Feast of Trumpets fits into the broader fall festival calendar, because it's a perfect progression. On the 1st of Tishri, you've got the Feast of Trumpets. That's the time to wake up, gather, and prepare. Jump ahead to the 10th of Tishri, and you hit the Day of Atonement, a deeply solemn day of cleansing and reconciliation. Then, from the 15th to the 21st, the mood completely shifts to the Feast of Tabernacles, a massive, joyous celebration of dwelling with God. It's not random, it's a masterfully designed spiritual journey.
Actually, we can simplify this even more using the rule of 3. Look at the logical flow. Call, cleanse, celebrate. Step 1 is the call, that acoustic warning of the trumpet. Step 2 is the cleanse, the solemn process of facing your actions and finding atonement. And it's only after the call is answered and the cleansing is complete that you finally reach step 3, celebrate. The Feast of Trumpets wasn't just some isolated holiday, it was the absolute, mandatory first step toward ultimate joy.
So the Feast of Trumpets was beautifully, intentionally designed as Israel's sacred wake-up call. The shofar summoned God's people to just stop, to halt their busy lives, look inward, and prepare to meet their Maker. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. In our incredibly fast-paced, wildly modern lives, filled with constant noise, screens, and endless distraction, what is your sacred wake-up call? When do you actually set aside the time to wake up, to truly reflect, and to prepare? Think on that. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep seeking out the fascinating structures behind the history we share.